Good morning. I'm Tamara Shoemaker. In kindergarten, we teach a unit on plant needs. And at that age, you keep it kind of down to the bare necessities. A plant will need sun and air and water and dirt. If you're missing any one of those four elements or four essentials, even if you have the other three, you don't end up having your plant maintain its viability. It will eventually die. So what we don't delve into yet at that age is that the student will eventually find it out, but it's that too much of the same element will also kill the plant. So, for example, a plant washing in water, like the waters of a flood, even though it might still have air and sun and dirt, will likely still die because it just has too much water. If you have too much sun, it'll eventually die. If you have too much air or too much dirt, the same deal. So my husband bought a beautiful potted flower for me one time, and he brought it home with the idea that I could choose any spot in my flower beds and I could plant it. And it was really pretty. It was bright yellow, is my favorite color, and I loved it. Well, one of my favorite colors. And I had a place specifically that I had been thinking about putting a flower in the flower beds. It was right next to our front porch steps, and it got some good morning sun, good afternoon sun. It was the best spot, I thought, for full sun exposure. And that's what it said on the tag on the flower. It said recommended full sun exposure. So I dug the hole right there, right next to the porch steps. But the spot I'd chosen, it turns out that it was an oven in the summer, and I hadn't realized this because of where it was. It collected all the heat from the sun, and it basically cooked my plant. It was so hot and so bright there that it just sort of surrounded the plant, and the plant withered and it died. So it had gotten too much sun, and consequently, all the plant parts fell off. It returned to the ground to be used later as nutrients for a hardier plant that I was going to put there later. So anyway, so much for analogies. I read 2 whole verses today in my really super speedy read through of the book of James. So today we're in James 1, verses 9 to 11. The brother in humble circumstances ought to take pride in his high position, but the one who is rich should take pride in his low position, because he will pass away like a wildflower. For the sun rises with scorching heat, and it withers the plant. Its blossom falls, and its beauty is destroyed. In the same way, the rich man will fade away even while he goes about his business. So at first I stumbled over the wording take pride in, because it seemed to clash with Philippians 2, 5-7, which says your attitude should be the same as that of Christ Jesus, who being in very nature God, did not consider equality with God something to be grasped, but made himself nothing, taking the very nature of a servant. So if my attitude is supposed to be the same as that of Christ Jesus, that is, an attitude that considers all others better than myself, how can I take pride in anything? So I went hunting down biblical commentaries to see what was up. I read at least 10 or 15 this morning from some well-established authors, not the whole commentaries, just verses on those 2 verses. Nowhere in any explanation of this text is the word pride mentioned. The phrase take pride in from the NIV is probably a less than the best translation of a phrase that more accurately would mean to exalt in or to glory in. So rereading that text with new understanding, it says the brother in humble circumstances ought to take glory in or to exalt in his high position, but the one who is rich should take glory in his low position. Wait, what? Humble position equal high position and rich equals low position? James isn't even putting this up for debate. Like, he's already assuming that it's true. Rich equals low, humble or impoverished equals high. He's just laying it out there on the table. That's his cards on the table. So that caught me off guard, a little weird because I've read this text a bajillion times, but I guess I never really paused to think too much about it before. Automatically, when I think of the wealthy, I think privilege. They, because of their status, get stuff that a lot of the rest of us don't, thereby elevating their status. When I think of poor, I think, bummer, y'all, because of their status, they go without, and thereby they lower their status. So that's just kind of the perspective most of us have At least I do, as a middle of the roader as far as wealth and privilege go. My children, we have food to eat, we have clothes to wear, we have a roof over our heads. We don't live in Beverly Hills, but we also don't live in tenement housing, just sort of somewhere in the middle. So Jesus, the servant king, he preaches an upside down kingdom, right? He flips it. So the last shall be first and the first shall be last. That's Matthew 20, verse 16. The greatest among you must be your servant. That's Matthew 23:11. Peace I leave with you, my peace I give you. I do not give to you as the world gives. That's John 14:27. What a great wrap up of how Jesus operates, right? I don't do it the way that you think I should do it, he seems to say. I have a better way, a different way. You're scared because of your circumstances? I won't take your circumstances away, but I will give you peace in spite of those circumstances. So Pilate and Jesus stand in a royal courtroom setting, looking at each other. Jesus says, my kingdom is from another place. And Pilate says, you are a king then. It's John 17:36-37. Pilate sees nations and a military and political might that can be manipulated according to the right conditions. Jesus sees brokenness and heart condition and sin that needs grace and healing and forgiveness. So they're looking at the same picture, only the picture Jesus is describing is an upside down flipped image of the one that Pilate expects, and Pilate doesn't understand. So back to James. But the one who is rich should glory in his low position, because he will pass away like a wildflower. For the sun rises with scorching heat, and it withers the plant. Its blossom falls, and its beauty is destroyed. In the same way, the rich man will fade away, even while he goes about his business. How can anyone glory in that? For the same reason that Jesus offers. He says, here's your pride. He says, here's your upside down kingdom. Here's my gift to you. Rich and poor are only two polar opposites of an earthly kingdom. My kingdom encompasses both of those polarities. Focusing on wealth will, like too much sun on a plant, wither you. Similarly, focusing on poverty will do the same thing. So in other words, he holds your circumstances. Jesus holds your circumstances, so you don't have to, right? Glory in that. He gives you your wealth. Glory in the one who puts you in that position. He gives you your poverty, too. Glory in the one who puts you in that position. Rich, poor, doesn't matter, because material wealth and the lack of it are as meaningless as a plant's cycle. Here one day, gone the next. God created both the plant and the sun that gives it its light and its life. So here's the deal. Stop focusing on the objects, because too much object is going to make you forget the one who holds the object in his hands, right? The circumstances, they become your whole world. And then you wither beneath the pressure. So hey, Jesus has got this under control. He's got you, so stop worrying. Have you ever noticed that adding an SCHM to the front of any word strips it kind of its power? It takes the gut punch of the word's meaning and it allows you to kind of ridicule it a little bit. It gives you, temporarily at least, the upper hand. So let's try it. Fear schmear. Scary schmeary. Circumstances schmircumstances. Instead of focusing and trusting in your circumstances, whether they're rich or whether they're poor, whether they have power over you or whether they don't, look at the one who holds those circumstances and trust him instead. Have a great Sunday.